No, I mean the chat on the YouTube.
Oh, right, right, okay.
Hello everybody, welcome to the DMG Info Crafters Tavern. As usual, it is the fourth Friday of the month, 8 p.m. Eastern. DMG Info Crafters Tavern, just Facebook stream. So it is also live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope, which is on Twitter. And joining me is Bill from Wylock's Crafting Vids. How are you today, Bill?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm getting there slowly but surely, a little bit sunburned from shooting YouTube videos for other channels this week. Too much spending time in the sun. I burn in like 2 seconds.
You look like a guy who burns easily.
Yeah. It's diabolical, man. Diabolical. So Ian Baxter's just joined us at Periscope. Thanks for joining us from Canada. Great to see you. Yeah, once again, we are broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Periscope, etc. Of course, if you are wanting to join us in the actual video stream itself, you can do that by visiting appear.in/DMGinfo. So if you actually want to join in the conversation and chat with us live on the video stream, be sure to check that out, appear.in/DMGinfo. All right. So, Bill, what have you been up to? I saw you got some of those rollers that our friend over on Black Magic Craft has been spruiking.
Yeah, they had a special, basically get 6 for the price of 4. So I got that. Tested it out real quick. Haven't had a chance to do anything further. One of them is a hexagon pattern, which I'm planning to use for some Necron terrain. But I had seen a couple sporadic people who had tried it out after Jeremy's video and didn't have success. But, I can say that there's got to be some variable. I don't doubt that it failed, but, this looks awesome. So I'm not sure what the exception is there. But
well, I'm someone who hasn't used a lot of foam. So my first question is, obviously, yes, it imprints the texture onto the foam. But obviously, I would assume it depends on the foam as to how long that texture remains, because some foam kicks back a little bit, so it doesn't remain as as imprinted as before.
Right, not an issue. This was last night, and these still look great. So you can't see it on my terrible webcam, but in my experience, that hasn't been an issue. So once I'm done with my current sci-fi kick, I'm looking forward to using these for some more fantasy stuff. That's where they're really going to come in handy. Roads are going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, roads and towns and making buildings and all that kind of thing. What about if you had, obviously you've only just tried on XPS foam, but what about, I was thinking, could you use it on moistened TP? That's, if you had several layers of that and you can roll it onto that, do you think that would work?
That's basically like clay at that point, right? Maybe once it was semi-dry, so it would still hold its shape.
Yeah.
I don't know. You'd have to try that out. They're nice, clear acrylic, clean easily. So that's something that I could easily experiment on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the comment section, Lefty Holmes asks, so what is the next crafting vid?
For you or for me?
Well, I suppose it's for both of us.
Yeah.
I'll go first. So I had taken a mini hiatus from doing videos purely because I've been super busy with work, but I'm coming back in full force very soon, which will probably be either this week or next week. And out of the blocks, I'm going to be doing my 16,000 subscriber competition winner. I've already selected the winner, but as I said in the competition, which was way back at 0 subscribers, because of the channel collapse, it's taken that long to get back to 16,000, which I'm now at about 17 and a half. That competition, the winner, basically, I'm building everything that they said in their entry, and so I will shoot every aspect of that build, and then the winner will receive that. I'll send it to them wherever they are in the world. So I'm going to do a similar one for my next subscriber competition, but I'll announce that once I've announced the winner from the previous competition. And the other thing I'm going to do is how to make D2s, because we use them extensively in 7D system. So I'm just going to do a little video on how to create D2s simply and easily.
Okay, cool. I'm 98% sure my next one's going to be these. Some scatter terrain. I used an airbrush to achieve that glow effect on the ground, but I'll be showing how to do it with a brush as well. And I cut these with a hot wire, but I'll also show how to do it with a knife to get pretty similar results. So, yep,
That's really
this
cool.
is the next
That's foam, are they?
Yeah, they're home insulation. Yep, and the ground is cork with chipboard for rigidity, because cork's really flimsy.
Yeah.
So this is strong.
I see Mel the terrain tutor. I was watching one of his videos, and the one he just did with tents, where he's using some sort of white material now for his basing. It's not a PVA, it was a PVS, I think.
Hmm.
So it's like a white, he carves that instead, and apparently that's quite robust a material for using for bases. But I'm sure if someone saw that video, or if Mel himself is watching, he can tell us exactly what it is in the chats. Lefty Holmes, have you guys made any gaming mats?
I have not. I just did a video about frontline mats, which are gaming mats are one of those things, just in my opinion, just ain't worth the effort. And I discovered those, a couple companies do the neoprene big roll-up ones, and I like the frontline ones. So no, I haven't made any, and I don't think I'm going to.
I have, but in a different context. So the only really one that I have now, that I use is I did an X-wing board. So it's basically a star field, which is basically black with lots of little stars on it. And I'd like to do like a Death Star trench sort of thing, as you've seen them on the internet. But it's how to get that 3D look in that 2.5D kind of realm, and still be able to move the ships around, and get that great sense of scale when playing X-Wing. The other thing I've done, I did background terrain for a sci-fi film that I shot years ago. It was all green screen, and I did all the miniatures. I did all the special effects with miniatures and things like that, and I did this huge Martian landscape, which was basically a tarpaulin, covered in PVA, covered in sand, and then I sprinkled powder paint over it, red and brown, and get that sort of Martian red and orange kind of look. So I had used that for gaming afterwards. I played 40k on it, but originally it was actually created for a short film. So yeah, I have, but not full. Not in the way that people think. So thank you everyone who has actually joined us. There are a few people in the chat. If you do want to actually speak to us on video and talk to us, you can go to appear.in/the DMG info, and you will appear here with us, Bill from Wildlands Crafting Goods, and myself, the DMG. Now, if you have any other questions, of course, throw them in the chat. Unfortunately, I don't really have access to the Facebook chat. Wildlife, if you actually have access to that, because I've got so many thousand windows open at the moment, I'm afraid if I close my Facebook window, it will bump me.
Would it be on your Facebook page, or?
Yeah, it should be on my Facebook page. Yeah.
Okay, let me check. Got the Twitch one up.
So Twitch. And hopefully there's no sound or video problems, which is usually something that plagues this show.
Yeah. Okay. Joshua Watson is with us on the Facebook one.
Okay, hi Josh, how's it going? Hello, while I crafting life, I've made of your patron from Spain. This must be might be translating, but yeah, he's one of your patrons from Spain.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I forgot I didn't have my microphone right here, so hopefully people were able to hear me properly before. So, 40k, why 40k and why not, some other wargaming, like a World War II or something like that?
Oh, for me, it was the lore that pulled me in first, you know. And then for a while, I was playing one-page rules, which is a free fan-made variant, and then 8th edition hit. It's really the lore. It's so it's huge and it's epic, and historical and modern don't really interest me as genres in role playing or wargaming for that matter. What about you?
I started with World War II custom rules that a friend of mine had written, and then we played what was it? It was some fantasy variant, and then I went on holiday to Australia because I was in South Africa at the time, and I found a white dwarf in a small town in Queensland, up on the tablelands. I saw a white dwarf, and it was just a picture of this dwarf with machine guns. I was like, okay, I can't not get this magazine. So I opened up that, and that exposed me to 40k and Warhammer Fantasy. So I went back to South Africa with that, and from the battle reports, we re-engineered the rules for 40k, and we started playing 40k with World War II army miniatures. And then about a year and a half later, I went to the UK, and everyone had just pulled together some money, and we bought all the different box sets of the time, which I think was second edition 40k. I'm not 100% sure. So it was Warhammer 40k. We got Warhammer Quest, and there was a couple of Blood Bowl, Necromunda. No, Necromunda came about a year later. We purchased that separately. But yeah, so we basically bought all of it all at once, and then we just, for like 2 years, every weekend, we were just playing all these different games. And of course, we only had the miniatures from the box, so once again, we were still using all the World War II army cards as the miniatures. And slowly, as people were going overseas and that sort of thing, we would put in requests for them to go and purchase army books and all that kind of thing. So we started to build up a library of stuff. And eventually I came back to Australia again, and I bought a Space Wolves army, and that was all in pewter, white metal at the time. And in order to immigrate to Australia, I sold my army, and that paid for my ticket. So you can tell how valuable that sort of stuff was in South Africa. I could buy an overseas airline ticket.
Yeah. And what about everyone else that's watching? Are you has anyone come from wargaming to role playing, or vice versa? Are you exclusively into role playing and not wargaming, and why? Because it's interesting. Scotty started the whole thing because he was into wargaming, got out of it, but applied the terrain crafting to role playing games, right? And I'm sort of doing the opposite. I'm going the opposite way. But just curious, who else out there has gone which direction?
Yeah, I mean, I originally started in trains. So as a young kid, I inherited a train set from my grandfather, who passed away many years before I was born. And old Markland train sets. And my father and I used to build terrain for those train sets. And yeah, it's just sort of grew. Once started playing war games, it gave more of an outlet to or an excuse really to build more terrain. Lefty Holmes says, thanks for keeping the crafting scene alive, guys. Keep up the great work. Cheers, mate. See you next time. The DMG Info does not have a Patreon, but my Patreon is 7D Systems, so that's for my role-playing game. So if you want to support the DMG Info specifically, you can purchase products on the DMG.info/store. So all the proceeds of that get basically reinvested into the channel or help to feed the cat, whichever is the most dire or needing of funds at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So, what sort of other things do you? Because I draw inspiration from a lot of different things. Recently, I've been playing a little bit more Hearthstone. I get in and out of Hearthstone every now and again. Oh, I want to play a card game, and I can't play Magic because you go out, you buy a starter deck, and then you go and play, and some guy's got 40,000 cards you've never seen before, and it's just like, oh my god, I have no idea what's happening. But Hearthstone I find is very easy to get into, and because it's digital, I can play it on my computer, my tablet, whatever. So a lot of I draw a lot of inspiration from that in terms of magic styles and creatures and all that sort of stuff for art and all these sort of things. I've been playing Craft the World, which is you play a pack of dwarves digging a big hole, and you build your own like castle and things, and that's quite a lot of fun. So, is there anything else that you do currently that draws inspiration to your channel or inspiration to you personally in terms of the things you're up to?
Yeah, I think regardless of whatever gaming you're into, think of the aesthetic of like the Lord of the Rings movies. It's very orderly. It's kind of low magic, you might say. It's a very structured approach to the world. All of the Games Workshop franchises are total gonzo storytelling, and it's reflected in the terrain that they make. So if you just go to the Games Workshop website, and this to answer your question, this is what I've been doing. You go to the gallery of all the models and all the terrain that they have. You don't have to buy them, just look at the picture, and there's so much crazy detail and weird ideas there. It's just a gonzo approach to storytelling. So if you're looking to do something weirder and get out of doing taverns and rock cairns and stuff and add something weird for your table, go to that website, look through the gallery, and make something. That's what I've been doing on my channel for the past several months.
Yeah, there's so many avenues to sort of spark that creativity in your head, and that's what I like about your channel and Scotty's channel and Jeremy's channel, Black Magic Craft, and all the other crafting channels that there are. It's like there's a sharing of ideas, and that's kind of what's central to what we're doing. And because it's the inspiration that's important rather than, okay, you cut here, then you draw this line and that sort of thing. There's the background inspiration as to what it is you're actually doing is, I think, the most fundamental and the most important part of what we're actually doing as channel creators. But in terms of where we draw our inspiration, I mean, I draw my inspiration from other channels and also from, things that are not necessarily related, especially things like computer games, or comic books and stuff like that. But I'm not a big comic book person. I don't go out and buy comic books. I like to go and browse a bookshop and look through graphic novels, but I'm not going to lay down $30 and take it home and copy what's in there. I just get some inspiration and that's it. Very occasionally I may actually buy a book that's on landscapes, or I was thinking of actually picking up Grey's Anatomy. There was a discount on like the full Grey's Anatomy. There's all the old anatomical drawings. Very useful thing for reference for if you're illustrating and stuff like that. So there's a lot of weird and wonderful things you can use for inspiration. So D. D'Souza 6. I've always played RPG D&D, but now I've been crafting terrain. My games have become very combat strategy heavy. which kind of reminds me more of wargaming. Yeah, that I would say that is true because you don't generally have terrain for the encounter in a tavern where you're talking to the serving person or whatever you don't put up a huge amount of terrain for that. I mean, you can. Would you do something to that effect, or would you rather just if it's just the layout for exploration and combat? Bill?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're asking me. um, yeah, I've in the beginning I was very anal retentive that everything that was in a room had to be made and represented on the table, down to barrels and tables and stuff. Nowadays, it's just the big encounters, the non-mundane things, makes them more special. So if they're in a tavern, I usually don't bother with that. Unless there
Yeah.
might, something cool might happen in it that would warrant it.
I mean, that's why I'd been hesitant to do a lot of town and city type stuff. Um, I would rather represent it as a dungeon so that you've the streets are the passageways and the buildings are the rooms. Um, so it's basically the same motif but with different stuff applied on the cardboard. But yeah, it's when you get into sort of you encounter a merchant and the merchant, are you going to put together the entire market? Most likely not. That's a lot of crafting for something that could take all of 2 or 3 minutes to say, yeah, you're in the marketplace and you buy a sword from Bob. Um, so you got to kind of, think about it from this perspective of terrain for exploration and terrain for combat. So, because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with exploration. I like to use terrain from an exploration standpoint as well, where if you think about a maze or something like that, when you're revealing aspects of the dungeon. And that's where I do like to put down some of the mundane things like the chairs and the tables and because
Yeah.
now you enter this interesting room. There's no monster in the room, but there's a cupboard and a table and a bed, and the people go, "Ooh, what's under the table? What's in the cupboard? There's a tapestry on the wall. What's the tapestry?" You know, and so they get a feel for what the environment is. Because sometimes when you're a dungeon master, especially when you're playing online, you can describe a scene and people are missing aspects of what you're saying. So through delays or through not listening or whatever, they don't get the 100% of the picture of what you're saying. Whereas with terrain, it really goes, okay, this is what you're looking at. So again, with online, you could probably do it with images. So you could show an image of a room or an image of a passage or something like that. So you can kind of focus everyone's um, imagination on the same sort of space, which is what really terrain actually does. You're just basically focusing everyone's attention rather than everyone having different ideas about what's happening. So once again, if anyone wishes to join in the chat, you can join us at appear.in/the DMG info. Eric Fountain, who's one of our regular watchers, thanks for joining us once again. Yes, the evil bar wench. Yes, I always run a sword through the first person who tries to serve me an ale because they will most likely be the plot quest hook, and we want to go in a different direction straight away. That's why I always like to start my games with someone falling down a hole or going into a trap, or it's just like, oh my god, things are just happening immediately. I don't like it when a game starts slow. Oh, you guys, when you did that Blade Runner one where we started in the middle of your trial for murder.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Lord Morbius, also a regular. So Eric and Lord Morbius, if you want, join us in the actual video chat, appear.in/the DMG info. Now, of course, there are other people watching us on Facebook. Unfortunately, if there are any messages on there, I am not able to see them at the moment. And thank you to everyone who's also joining us on Periscope and Twitch. So it doesn't matter where you comment, your comments hopefully will appear on the bog roll of inspiration down the left side of the screen. Except for the Facebook comments, I'm waiting for the developers of the software to actually come out with something that will allow us to integrate Facebook into this. So, longest continuous game you've ever run, from Zach Williams. You can start on that one, Bill.
It was probably about 6 hours. Yeah, it was one of the early ones with my group a couple years ago. Yep, 6 hours, not crazy.
So, if continuous game, I would think even a single sitting, I think was about 15 hours. We did stop for an hour for food, but we actually continued playing while we were. So, but it was, we were more downtime stuff that we were doing during while gobbling down food. But yeah, I think that was the longest one. But the longest running campaign I was in was about 10 years, and the longest running story arc was probably about the same amount of time, 10 years. So yeah, I mean, it's these things can take over your life, man.
Mm-hmm. Just saw that article floating around Facebook about the guy who's run a 35-year campaign.
Yeah, I can see how that, but also with those, sometimes it would be strange to have a 35-year campaign with the same characters, because you'd have to be running like epic level in order to keep that going, and you'd level like once a year.
Well, if you're using the old tables, I mean, the 1E was millions of XP. It was intended to be a long-term thing.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, at 35 years, they'd have to be playing 1E or second edition. Oh, by the way, today we're just going to transition into a entirely new version of the rules. No, we're not.
So I had a thought. There's a guy named, if you watch my channel, I advertise it, Dan Buccini. He does casting of dungeon tiles, and he uses the 1 1/4 inch spec. And he's finished my most recent module. He's putting together kits and selling them, but he finished the first one, and it's right here. So I figured, why not do a little live unboxing and show these off a little bit?
We like unboxings. So precious.
It may take a sec. You can keep going.
Oh. It may take a while. So, D. D'Souza, I just came across a situation. Normally, I'll drop a map down on the table for a city, or maybe Theater of the Mind for a tavern encounter. Yeah, it's basically, if you've got, that's where maps come in very handy, is where you're going to go, right, you're in the city, where do you want to go? Slap down a city. But you can do that with, you may even want to do, rather than an actual map, you could do what Hankren does over on Drunken Dragons, now Runehammer, where you've got index cards. So you have index cards that you throw down an image that it says, okay, there's a table and a chest and and then there's a weird wobbly gooey creature in the corner, and you can use that either randomly, or you can basically find appropriate images in the set that he puts out, and use those. So there's lots of different ways to incorporate different art, different techniques into your role-playing game. So yeah, don't feel like you have to throw down terrain for absolutely every aspect of the game.
Role-play. How would you suggest to give role-playing situations in my combat encounters? I think it's always good, like when the enemy reaches halfway on HP or something like that. Have some twist that's going to come in, change the environment, the room that they're in, introduce or unlock some new ability that you had withheld. It allows for a dramatic moment, and of course they can, depending how hammy you are, you can have the villain, what's the word? bloviate or give away their plan.
Soliloquize.
Yes, thank you. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, in combat encounters, role playing from a situation of describing their actions. That's one thing. You could just get them to describe their actions, but that's more of a role playing in terms of not actually speaking, but role playing in terms of speaking. You can have the monsters actually talking while fighting. How dare you come and attack our camp? And this is for our leader. We know you killed them last week, and there's a mistaken identity thing that's come into that. And now your characters have to try and explain the mistaken identity before they wipe out, or they need to get more information, but these orcs want to kill them. So the monsters can actually speak. There are a lot of monsters in the game that are capable of talking, but it's very rare that you ever hear the monsters talking. I like to do it in their actual languages. So I just make up languages as I go. So the orcs and ogres will be Gurak Tuch Alalundor Kara, which adds a little bit of flavor to the game. Because now, like, what the hell is this thing saying? And then they do some checks to try and figure out what this orc is shouting at them. So that's the kind of thing I think you could probably inject into the game that would make the combat more interesting than just rolling a dice. Again, it also depends on what game you're playing, as to how you can actually make the combat more interesting as well.
All right.
All right.
Looks like there's a pause in the chat. So here, I'll show you this real quick.
Cool.
All right.
Ceiling cam.
This is, again, it's called Dungeon Cast.
Oh, cool.
So there's a map, and it comes in like this, and this is every single thing you need to build this particular dungeon, this module, and run it, including all the decor. So I'm literally looking at this for the first time.
Sweet.
And I had high hopes, but these are really cool in person. They feel great.
So this is resin cast, is it?
Yeah. Yep. And it was all done by hand, and now he's got the master molds done, so he's going into production.
And this is all based on your tile system?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So he mostly sells locally right now, but he's starting to go to cons and trying to grow. And part of that is you can buy this kit, and it will include a copy of the module, of course.
Cool.
And I don't know what his price point is. This is literally the first one that he made, so he sent it to me. I'll be doing a whole episode unboxing it and laying out the dungeon and walking through it. But this is.
And are the measurements the same as yours? So, I mean, in other words, it'd be compatible with someone's tiles if they've already done your tile set?
Yeah, I think he does the walls a little bit thinner, but it is a 1 1/4 inch grid. So it's cool. 2.5 inch tile. Sorry, I keep going off screen.
That's all right.
Cool. And I'm going to have to be up pretty late tonight digging into all this.
I've got to be checking out the merch.
Yep.
Sweet. So, does he have a website or anything yet? Or?
He's got a Facebook page.
Page.
Clearly you watch my channel. I'm just kidding. So, yeah, it's Dungeon Cast by Dan Buccini. It's on Facebook.
Is it Buccini or Puccini?
Buccini. There might be one N.
Yeah. Cool. Now that looks some great stuff. That looked really, really cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to get into casting stuff, but it's just, for me, it's just too messy. If someone else does it and I get it at a decent price, excellent.
I think we've had quantum leaps in ideas, right, in the whole crafting community.
Yeah.
It's like every year or so, something revolutionary comes along. Casting, I think, will be the next big thing, because you're right. I've never done it. You just said you've never done it. I don't think Jeremy or Scotty have ever done it. So someone is going to try it and come up with some innovative new way to use it.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah. going to be the next big thing.
Yeah, it's for me, it's finding the right sort of material that people can use. If I'm going to do a tutorial on something, it's going to be something that you can get pretty much anywhere. Obviously that's my shtick. Um, so, some people do it with dental stone, some people do it with resin, some people do it with, all manner of other things, plaster of Paris, and, they all have their pluses and minuses. So, yeah, it's just that, as you say, is sort of the frontier that our sort of band is not really explored so much yet, and as you say, it's probably going to be the next frontier of what's happening. I mean, I'm still building wargame terrain out of pizza boxes. I can just see some of the people in the wargaming community going, "Oh my god, is this guy building terrain out of pizza boxes?"
Beck Williams asking about EVA foam. So that's the spongy kind of stuff that, like the puzzle pieces that we've seen a lot of.
Oh,
Those,
yeah.
Yeah. I haven't used that, but
yeah, anything that deforms is difficult. You can use normal sort of bedding sponge as well. You can use that for various things, but it does deform. So if you apply anything to it, that it could break or crack or flake off or something like that. So, yeah. If that's when you say that is that sort of spongy, it reshapes a little bit once. Spongedy, that's not a real word. What I want to experiment with is cold porcelain, because you can mix that up with it's like not flour and PVA, it's something else. It might be flour and PVA, but anyway, a lot of people use it for little trinkets. They make little trinkets out of it. But the problem is it dries, it shrinks down about half its size. Or maybe even, I think it's maybe even just 25% of its size. So you have to be very careful with scale. But that could be quite cool for just quickly slapping together a few little, mass miniatures or something like that. You want to do a few little monsters and that. So I want to do some experiments with that. That was it's on my list of things to do for my DMG's lab videos. And there's quite a few videos on that for people who do crafting for little charms and stuff. That's quite popular in that because it doesn't matter if it shrinks down. But with us with scale, I don't think you'd want to do dungeon tiles in that because I don't think the proportion changes in a way that the measurements would remain the same on every piece.
Mm-hmm. So D'Souza says, I mostly run homebrew, but once in a while I like to do a pre-written module. How would you go about crafting for pre-made modules? Would you read the story and make up your own encounters, or try to duplicate the maps given to you from the module? So I built a channel off of this question. Doing a literal adaptation of the map is, of course, not required in D&D, right? Sometimes some traps are laid out that the distances do matter, and so in that case, it's certainly worth modeling. I would tell you, having had a few years' experience now, you ought to craft things that are big encounters, only the big stuff in the dungeon. Don't worry so much about hallways unless they're tactically gonna matter.
Yeah, it comes back to the exploration versus combat. If you're going to do something that's more exploration, then yes. What I've also experimented with is what I'm calling dungeon in a box. So you can build a miniature version of the dungeon in a pizza box, and that's really the dungeon map. And then you have the rooms. So you can mark off where people are in the dungeon, and then you you have the rooms themselves. Don't mock my accent. Yeah, so that's things I've been experimenting with. I mean, I do lots and lots of little things like, like that. How can you rock up at a game and bring the map and everything with you and not have to bring 10 boxes of stuff? So that's one way you could do it. You could run the whole thing out of a pizza box, which you can easily carry on your bicycle, in your car, on the train. It's just a pizza box. People aren't going to freak out.
Reminds me of, did anyone else have Mighty Max as a kid? They also made Polly Pockets, which was marketed towards girls, but the Mighty Max things that open up and it's a small adventure and you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but it's more from, they used to do also things like Micro Machines and stuff. They used to do similar kind of stuff.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know that one specifically, but I have seen products like that. That's pretty much where I got the idea from. And you can go, if you go to shops that sell games, they often have like puzzles and things. And I like that sort of, where they have like you move things around to try and get the city to look right or something to that effect. And that's kind of where I got the idea from, is like it's like a little puzzle in a tray. And so, yeah, you can create things to move around inside this box to play however you wish to use it. As far as whether I would do, I mean, I haven't actually played any modules, other than being in a game where someone was running the module and I was a player, and that was about a year or so ago. But other than that game, I haven't actually played a game of D&D in probably 7 years. Mainly because I've been playing my own version of the rules, or I've been playing other games. So, it's difficult to say whether one should duplicate something exactly, but as you say, there's specific aspects of when it comes to traps and stuff. But again, I really just, if I'm looking at a module, I'm looking for inspiration. I'm not really going to run it as it is. I own probably about 4 or 5 modules in a book form, and I purchased those after I did Under the Tavern, because I just wanted to see how other people did modules. And then I realized I didn't like the way other people did modules. So I'm like, nah, this is not what I want. But I do look at those in terms of, the situations that people have created and that sort of thing. So I'm not the best person to ask about direct, I'm also the kind of guy who's, the players are going to be here in half an hour, and I put the dungeon together on the poker table, and they arrive, and then we start playing. So that's how I prepare. And then while we're wandering through the dungeon, I'll be wandering through the monster manual thinking, oh, this will be good. This will be appropriate. And now that I run 70 system every week for my patrons, and a lot of that is made up on the fly, including the monsters, because the reason I wrote the rules the way they are, it gives me the ability to just create things on the fly. So I can instantly, I want a monster with like 50 tentacles and a giant beak, and okay, away we go. That's the point I'm at now. So, I've gone from paging through the monster manual looking for something appropriate to flipping through my mind, okay, all right, it would be really cool to be attacked by some kind of weird squiddy thing now. Straight out of the Matrix, but more organic.
Roll for Damage is watching.
Hey,
love your planetarium video, man. Feel free to join the video here. appear.in/the DMG What's he at? 600 subscribers now?
Yeah. Did you say 700?
600. He's at 600.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd love to have you on, so join us. Join us. We won't eat you. Bill might, but I won't. I've had my lunch. Yeah, so what is EVA again? You told me before it was some kind of spongy stuff. What is EVA? EVA.
It's like they make those. Actually, I don't think of it. Scotty used them at one point. It's those big 1 foot by 1 foot panels, and they have the teeth on them that interlock.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about now. Yep. I was thinking extruded polystyrene or expanded polystyrene. It's the Eve
No, that's
throwing me.
rigid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rigid.
Yeah. Yeah, they do make the like floor like floor tiles for like kids gyms and things. They use it for that, I think.
Yes, exactly.
Kids gyms and play areas. All I want is my own personal jumping castle room. Yay! There you go. Roll for damage. Zach's just joined your channel. Of course, if you haven't subscribed to Wylock's Crafting Vids, now is the perfect opportunity to do so. You're at, what, 22,000 subscribers now?
22, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good going, man. That's good going.
Thanks. The waterfall one went bonzo.
Goes viral on you. One of my clients asked me the other day, he says, okay, we need to make a viral video. I'm like, okay. If I knew how to do that, I wouldn't need clients.
Yep, you never know.
Yeah, used for workshop floors and such, yep. I assume there's obviously more sturdier stuff than what we're talking about in terms of the kids' playset sort of things. They come in those like bright garish Lumo colors.
Hey, real quick. So
Yeah.
let's talk airbrushes.
Airbrushes?
You don't use an airbrush, do you?
No, never have.
Never have. Man, you got
spray
to
paint cans, but yeah.
What you can do, it's so good at making you look good. Not trying to sell airbrushes or anything, but you're not going to be able to see this. The gradients you can achieve on your miniatures and on your terrain, getting a nice fade between, like into a pond. So getting a nice fade from your brown riverbed down into the green of it. It's just awesome for doing gradients. For $80, you get the compressor and the starter airbrush. I would say more than any other tool, I'm glad I bought that one.
Does it make a lot of noise?
Yes. It's not loud, but mine doesn't have a reservoir tank. So when you're using the airbrush, the compressor is running.
Yeah.
But it's not loud. It sits there. Whenever you're spraying, the piston is going back and forth. Yeah.
So how loud would you say that it is? Like a microwave?
Yeah, maybe a little less than that.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, pretty close.
Yeah, I mean that was really my concern. It's because I'm living with my in-laws at the moment, so making huge amounts of loud noise is probably not going to win any favorable competitions.
Yeah. You guys suggest laying out all your terrain at once or slowly laying down tiles as they go through the dungeon? Well, this was the subject of our April Fool's exchange, I think. But when you have individual 2x2 form factor, you can lay them down one at a time. And well, you could do this with Garrett's tiles as well. I like to lay them down one at a time so I don't have to bother with fog of war or anything like that.
I love fog of war. I like the reveal. When you're laying down a room and it's like, okay, all right,
The problem is they see the black sheet of paper there, so they know there's something over there. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. You want them to explore the entire dungeon, don't you? You don't want to do a whole bunch of work and then they don't go there. And then you can also fuck with their heads because you can basically just put black paper there and there's nothing underneath.
That's true. Good point. Hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
I've had one of those situations where they like employed like civil engineers to come in and try and figure out how to get through this wall, and there's nothing on the other side. You find dirt, and the exact word they used was bastard.
Mhm. That's what you get for metagaming.
That's right.
Bye, Zach. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. It's like you have a chest, and people go, "Ooh, a chest," and so remember, like, "Oh, treasure." But my player's like, we're getting out of this room. We are not going anywhere near that chest. This is a problem. We just do not want to be involved with." You come across a pond. No, we're getting no ponds. You find an altar. No altars. Just plain simple. We don't want anything fancy. Just years of things not being as they seem.
Mm-hmm. So here's another thing I learned recently.
Yep.
I've gotten into miniature painting the past year, so I've got a good collection of miniature paints now next to my cheap crafting paints, and I've started to, especially for the colors I don't use often on the minis, yep. I'll use my good paints on terrain, and the results are noticeably better. I have found better coverage, better. It's just more vibrant.
So on the terrain,
for my terrain, yeah. Like the Army Painter Black gives an awesome one coat coverage. Dries fast and a little pricier, but I don't intend it. I'm going to do a big mesa or something. I'll use craft paint, but don't be afraid to use your miniature paints. They go a long way.
Yeah, just only problem is that like $4 or $5 per little thing. They don't go very
far.
They
are, but again, if you use them smart, and again, the airbrush helps because it's good at spreading. But
so would you airbrush in a basic color first, and then use the more expensive paints for like the little bit more detailed work?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That makes more sense. It's like when I'm illustrating, I just bought a marker that has a 30mm nib. So because I just do large areas of black, so it's about an 1.5 inches wide. So I just do wide swaths of black. Well, my wife doesn't understand my obsession with these pens.
Hey, so a couple of years ago, I tried to learn how to draw. It didn't go well. What tips would you have for someone who wants to learn how to draw humanoid figures? Because landscapes are okay. I know how to do perspective, and that's easy. But humanoid figures, or dragons, or any kind of thing that's like a creature. If you want to learn how to draw, what tips would you provide?
Well, I've been saying this to a few people behind the scenes that I'm thinking of actually starting a channel on illustration. Not because I think that my illustration is better than anybody else's, but there's also, there's so many different styles and ways of doing things that you can learn a lot from everyone's different styles. And so I would say probably the best advice, this is my own personal thing, draw what you see, not what you think you see. I mean, you're a mathematical person, you're meticulous in what you do. When you look at a human face, if you look at it from a standpoint of shapes, what do you see? So not what your mind tells you that you see, because your mind always colors what you're seeing with, it's actually giving you false information. But if you actually look at your face, or a picture of a face, you've got sort of the central triangle, and then that's part of a larger triangle. You've got two circles here. You've got your circles for your eyes. You've got the layout of the face in terms of there's actually a grid. You've got the placement of the ears. Where do your ears happen according to where your eyes are and all that sort of thing. How is the face actually structured? So you look at it and say, okay, what is the structure of what I'm actually looking at? And then you replicate that structure in lines. So you can draw the circles in a light pencil or whatever. Then when you do the inking, you follow, you basically tracing the most important parts of those lines. And that is essentially the most important thing. Then the skill of a true artist is someone can draw what they see in their head rather than what they see in front of them. So it's begin to translate the skill of that structure of practicing looking at objects and things from a standpoint of form. How is this object put together? And you can copy other artwork and you can copy real life pictures or sculptures or whatever, but draw exactly what you see. So not what your mind tells you see, but what you actually see. And then as you develop that skill, then you draw from your mind. Okay, what am I envisaging in your mind? And so you try to remove all the clutter of, okay, dragon has scales and a dragon, because what people tend to do is they start with the scales, and then it just becomes this a mess of scales, and they haven't actually created the form of the head or the wings or anything first. So that's one way to start out. Start out with the simple shapes. Once you've got the shapes right, then you can go to the lines of where those shapes intersect and where the fold would be or the edge would be. That's where your lines are going to be. And then once you've kind of got that, then you start working on light. So you have a light source, and how is the light hitting this three-dimensional object? So where would the shadows be? So then you fill in the shadows, and you get used to actually drawing shadows, and you focus on doing shadow, 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 shadow. And then once you've done that, understand how the light is creating texture on that object, and then how do you then, from those shadows, then extend it into texture on the object. And then essentially you've built up an image. So I'll just give you an example here. So I just did this one. You've seen this build, but other people haven't. So this is just, this. You've got a cylinder, which is the castle. You've got the round shape of the moon, which is the light source, which again is a reflection of the sun. You've got the tree in the top corner. You've got the shapes of like the little road marker thing here. You've got the shape of the sword. The guy kneeling down. You've got his hands and that kind of stuff that's happening here. So all of that was built in shapes and forms first. And then I build the lines around that. And then I work on the shadowing. And then I build the texture into it based on where the light source and the shadowing is. And obviously there's no image like that. I drew that from my mind, but there's elements that have been put in there from, the way I like to draw things. So that's not the best way to draw a tree. That's not the best way to draw water, etc. And there will people go, oh no, that's not how you do water. It's how you want to do it. What you feel comfortable with doing, and what to you makes you feel like I want to actually I like looking at that. To me, for whenever I create art, my best art is something that I actually enjoy looking at. And when I'm looking at it, I'm seeing, even though I spend hours drawing the thing, I can still, there's areas of interest in the picture that are drawing my eye to it again and again and again. I mean, there's some stuff that I drew once and I'll never look at it again, or if I do see it, it's like, eh. But some of the artworks is just, that to me is the sense of accomplishment. I've achieved something when I can appreciate my own work. Something like this, the back of these cards, just a little door, that didn't take very long to illustrate this. It's not my best work by any stretch of the imagination, and nor is it the best, artwork ever, but it's functional in terms of what I wanted it to look like. And I like it from that sense, And again, it's all about shapes. So you've got the curvatures, the door. You've got the curvature of the ceiling. You've got the shapes in the stonework and all that kind of stuff as well. So Start with shapes, then go into lighting, and then go into texture, and build it up in that order. Don't try to start with texture; it never works, never.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a whole channel worth of stuff. Yes, and as Roll for Damage says, Draw with Jazzer on YouTube. Draw with Jazz is very cool. He's actually Shadversity's brother. So if you've ever seen Shadversity, that's his brother. Well, the Draw of Jather has like 2 million subscribers, and Shadversity has about 180,000.
Okay. I'm just checking out one of his videos right now.
Yeah, and as D. D'Souza said, yeah, the best way to get good at drawing is draw a little bit every day. Iteration is what he's talking about. So if you draw a cube, and then you draw another cube, and then you draw another cube, you're going to get better and better and better at drawing cubes. At first you start with a ruler, and then you go freehand, and then it's like, okay, how can I rapidly draw a cube? And then you draw cubes at different angles, you draw cubes, with different lighting, and you draw cubes with different textures on them. And you become the master at drawing cubes. But I don't think you need to start with just cubes. I think you can, once you've been working with shapes and you understand the shapes and how the shapes interact in the world you want to produce. If you want a flat drawing with no perspective, you're still going to need shapes. If you do want perspective, then you need to know how the shapes are interacting with the three-dimensional points. How many focal points are there? How many points of distance, if this is 5-point perspective, is it 2-point perspective, or a single-point perspective? Then you're going to start getting more and more and more technical. But you start with that with shapes, so you can build your drawing around the shapes first, because that's the foundation. All good drawings or terrain or sculptures or whatever built on good foundations.
Okay.
Yeah, Draw with Jazz. I did a video response to Jazzer. He was struggling with looking at his camera. He kept drawing with a camera in the way, so it was hard for him to draw. So I did a video response on how he could use the webcam. So he thought that was quite cool. Not that I know him personally or anything. Just because he lives in Australia doesn't mean I know him. It's a big island, man.
Yeah.
I think it's wider than the continental US. It's 4 or 5 times.
My wife's been there, but I haven't.
And I've been to your glorious country, and you haven't been to either of mine.
Yeah.
You're slacking off, Bill.
Guy in my church group's from South Africa, though.
Oh, yeah?
He's in my D&D group, too.
Where from, do you know?
Does Cape Horn sound?
Cape Town.
Cape Town.
There is a Cape Horn, but that's not in South Africa.
Oh, okay. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, Cape Town would be. That's where I'm from.
Okay.
That's where all of humanity is from.
I'll have to check with him.
Yeah, so the outside of Cape Town, there's the oldest humanoid remains were found in a cave out there. So it's the cradle of life, or human life, supposedly. I don't know if that's true or not, but when you're in the country, they will tell you all the things that we're good at. When you're outside the country, you hear none of that crap. So Fred Schmidt says, I don't draw, but I like watching drawing tutorials. I do draw, and I do watch drawing tutorials, and a lot of times I'm watching drawing tutorials and I go, okay, I like the pen he's using, and that's all I got from it. Because sometimes when there's a lot of people that have is it a confluence of ideas or a confluence of style or something, everything starts to look the same. And so that's what you've got to be careful of. Don't lose your own style of doing things. If you like doing fur with little dots instead of lines, do the little dots. You know, because everyone else says use lines, that doesn't mean, you know, it's your style. It's the way you like doing things. And that's part of the artistry, is creating your own style and creating an image from your own mind that no one else could actually do. Whereas if you're just drawing another version of Spider-Man or another manga drawing, because there's a lot of people who draw in the manga style, and it's, you know, there's nothing wrong with the manga style, but if everyone draws in the same style, it kind of like homogenizes everything, and you lose some of that uniqueness that I think is important. And that's why I think you understand the basics of what people are doing, but then approach it from your own angle and do that sort of thing. Yeah. South Africa is a beautiful country, yes. Cape Town at the moment is pretty much running out of water. I think they're down to now, each person is allowed 89 liters a day. So there's a huge water crisis there. The dams are almost empty, which they've just gone through a whole bunch of power supply crises and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's getting rough there now. Anyway, one thing I did want to mention, I got an email after the last Crafters Tavern from Tyler McDowell, and he was stressing a few facts about the power tools we were talking about. So, so I just thought I'd read out what he was saying. I have used a full-size table saw to make my dungeon tiles set out of MDF, and it does fine until cutting anything less than an inch or so. After that, you're looking to lose fingers. Anyone that asks me what to use for small lumber or terrain miniatures, I could tell you to get a hobby miter box and razor saw. And there's a few links for those from Hobby Lobby, which I'm probably sure you could get from Michael's or Riot or whatever, you know, whatever stores you have in your country. With these, they can then cut lolly sticks and use the videos very accurate. For lumber, they can then get basswood, balsawood, or craft sticks. And then there's other links to other bits and pieces that obviously things that have less noise and all that sort of thing. So you can get miniature tools for miniatures. But what we were originally talking about was using larger tools, you know, the normal standard sort of stuff. But yeah, as the hobby grows, I'm sure there will be companies that are producing things like those rollers that we talked about right in the beginning, and, you know, the hot wire cutters and all that kind of stuff that are made precisely for this sort of thing. We're probably going to see more and more and more of that as the years pile on. So how was it transitioning the airbrush from terrain to miniatures, where you have to be way more precise?
It's not that hard at all. The airbrush is awesome for doing your priming and your base coat. I mean, you get a perfect buttery smooth base coat in about 8 seconds, as opposed to with a brush. And then beyond that, the only reason after the base coat that I would use the airbrush is for, you know, doing a gradient. And as long as you aim it away, you know, I could get it.
Do you mask it?
You know, if you're going to hit this blade here, you aim it like this from behind, so there's no chance that it sprays this way onto the miniature. And I've found that there's always an angle for you to be able to do that. So you do have to be precise, and you don't pull back as far. You know, you only pull back a little bit to get a small stream, but it's pretty easy to control from what I've found.
Do you ever mask it? So like put a piece of card or something in the way?
There is one time I had to do that. I had about 30 Necron warriors over there that were in eBay rescue, so they already had that clear green plastic in there. So I couldn't base coat it, so I did have to put some tape over those.
Yeah.
But other than that, no.
So I know you can get like some sort of like gummy type stuff that you can place over them, either where it's been painted or over the plastic itself, as you say, when you've got that sort of green plastic and you want to keep that or something to that effect. Um, do you know what that stuff is? I know they use it in drawing sometimes as well when you're coating if you're using for watercolors.
Yeah, I think it's just blue tack, like the stuff you would use to temporarily hang something on the wall.
No, blue tack. You could do it with blue tack, but this stuff is you basically paint it on, so it's almost like a latex, and then you can just
Oh,
peel it off, but it doesn't damage the stuff underneath.
hmm.
So in other words, the last thing you want to do is on your drawing or your miniature or whatever, pull the stuff off and it takes all the paint with it. Um, but this stuff is like it dries like a latex, a non-sticky latex, which you can just
Oh,
peel off, which obviously can then give you the sharp edges and stuff that you'd want. I just cannot for the life of me. I know people who do watercolors use it a lot to mask areas of the picture. So if anyone either watching now or in the future, if you know what that is, whack it in the comment section.
cool.
Alrighty. Well, it's been an hour and 15 minutes, which is about time for us to say sayonara. You have anything you'd like to add at the end, Bill?
Um, no, I mean, I assume that anyone watching this has subscribed to your channel, and that's how they know about it. But got to give the same plug you gave me earlier. Subscribe to DMG, especially since he's coming back with more crafts soon.
It's coming back in a big way.
Good. I'm looking forward to it.
And I probably will start another channel as well. So many channels, so little time.
16 of them. Yeah.
So one last question. How long does it take you to clean your airbrush? I have one of the more expensive tester's brushes, and it feels like I spend more time cleaning it than using it.
When I started out, it took a long time, but then I figured out the right order to do things. So what I do is fill it with water, mix it, dump the excess, blow out the little bit that's left, wipe it out. So far, I haven't used any cleaner at all. So you dump the excess, you wipe the rest of it out with a rag, and now there should only be a drop or two left down in the well. Blow that out, and now you start putting in your cleaner for the first time. I only use acrylics. I haven't used testers enamels, but it takes me 3 to 5 minutes to clean it. And I actually don't even have to go to the sink anymore. I've gotten good enough at it. I can do it right here at the desk, and I'm all done.
Cleaning? What is this cleaning thing everyone talks about?
Cleaning your airbrush? If you don't, you'll have a $100 hunk of metal.
But I'm sure I'll find something I can use that metal for.
Paperweight.
Exactly. If
Thank
you're
you.
wealthy enough to just buy like new airbrushes every single time,
Mm-hmm.
then you should come up with some crazy cheap like $3 thing that's like a use once. You just squeeze something and it does it. You're the engineer, Bill. You should be working on these projects. Damn it.
Maybe I'll do an episode or an editorial focusing on airbrush use.
I need it.
Okay.
So I can steal the idea and do my own version.
What it's all about.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us across all the different platforms. So it was Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter/Periscope. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are in the world. I know we had people from all over the show. You are always welcome to join us live on the 4th Friday of the month at 8 p.m. Eastern on this channel, the DMG Info. But there is talk about there being a collection of different shows across a collection of different channels. But more about that later. As the negotiations continue on, we may see this on Wylox very soon. But until next time, thank you for joining us once again. And if you'd like to support this channel, check out the dmg.info/store, or you can check out Wylock's crafting vids, and your Patreon is?
It is. Wylock's Armory. Yep.
Wylock's Armory. So patreon.com/Wylock's Armory. Wylock with a Y. All right, thank you very much. Enjoy your days. Or evenings, as the case may be. Now, how do I stop this thing?